9/11, once something goes wrong in America, even if they catch fresh cold, the rest of us get pneumonia, if not worse. This afternoon, I've invited a special guest to help us to kind of unpack this thing on tariffs and to get a deeper understanding as to what really you call tariff, how does it affect the rest of us, or it affect the economy, or it affect you at home, it affect you sending your children to school and the entire 9 years that involves with it. And I've asked a distinguished son of the soil, Dr. Rupert Rhodd. Dr. Rhodd is an associate professor and dean and associate dean in the College of Business at the Florida Atlantic University. He's very involved in the Jamaican community, and of course, he is a co-chair of the Coalition of Jamaican Alumni Associations, of which he's a founder of Florida, and of course, it's an umbrella organization supporting Jamaica alumni organizations across Florida. Dr. Rhodd is online with us today from the University of Florida Atlantic University. Dr. Rhodd, are you there? Good afternoon and welcome, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Miller. Good afternoon.
I'm not hearing you now.
How are you, sir?
Thank you. Hearing you now. So how you been doing?
I am doing well. Doing well, sir. And it's, I'm making the time for you.
Because
this
so
is
grateful.
An important topic.
Because I know you are running hot. So I thank you so much for your time. And let's jump straight into it, Doctor, because I know you don't have much time and thing. But for the benefit of my listeners, just walk us through what we hear the word tariff, and a lot of people have never heard it until when President Trump started to mention tariff, because it wasn't necessarily a part of our day-to-day conversation. For the benefit of those persons on the cap and bus, what are tariffs and how does it affect me and my household?
Well, let me take you back to
Yes.
the idea of what is really the basis for international trade.
Okay.
Countries come together to trade when they are able to produce goods and services at a relatively lower cost, comparative cost than others, and export those goods to countries that do not have that low comparative cost.
Okay.
So you find that in this international economy, Caribbean countries export certain goods for which they have comparative advantage. The United States exports certain goods for which they have comparative advantage. And the world, other economies in this world do the same. And on the other side of the coin, we import those goods for which we do not have that comparative advantage. So it's a relationship that in the long run, all of us benefit. We get goods, imports at a lower relatively cost, and we are able to sell our exports basically at a price that is beneficial to the economies. So, what is a tariff? We are selling an item at a certain price on the world market. What is a tariff? A tariff disturbs that comparative advantage, because a tariff is a tax that is placed generally on an import item. So a tax increases the price of the item coming into the country. Now, we could have export tariffs too, but those are rarely used. Tariffs are mostly used on imports. And
So,
there are reasons
So if I'm
why we
exporting,
place tariffs.
so I'm exporting coffee
Yes.
from Jamaica into the United States,
yes.
or Trinidad, or into Canada, or
Or
Belgium,
from Costa Rica.
or from or into, we're exporting into. Once it gets to the border and has to go into Costa Rica or to in Canada, then Canada imposes a tariff, a tax onto that coffee coming in to their country.
If Canada chooses
they
to
choose to.
to impose a tariff, it means that the coffee comes in at a higher price. In the self same way, in the United States, when a tariff is imposed on goods coming in, the price of those items increases to the consumers. So a
But
tariff
they
is
are
basically a tax on the item.
okay. But it is done through mutual discussion to say, well, boy, we are selling our coffee, but we hope that our coffee gets in there at a reasonable price, so it can be beneficial to us to sell it to sell it to the United States.
I don't understand what you mean by mutual discussion, because a tariff is imposed on goods for many reasons. Number one, a tariff can be imposed on an item that is coming into a country because you would like the same item that is produced there but at a higher price. You would like to protect that item and cause that
Okay.
item, that industry to grow.
Right.
So remember now, you are imposing a tariff on a product that is coming in at a lower at a lower relative price. So if you are producing the same item at a higher price, if you can only produce it at a higher price, when you impose a tariff, one of the reasons why you would impose that tariff is because you want to protect the high price goods that you are making. You want
That you are
that
making at
industry
home.
to grow, and you want it to hire more people, and you want it to be a part of your economic output. Okay, so that's one reason. Secondly, tariffs are also imposed when countries trade unfairly. In other words, there's a term that we often use, dumping. Dumping is when you choose to sell your product overseas at a lower cost than that which you sell it for at home.
At home.
So that is unfair, because what you're actually doing, you are trying to sell it at a lower price to gain that market, and in the long run, you will drive all the competition out. Tariffs are also imposed when you have strategic industries that you want to grow. You want to grow your strategic industries. You want to protect your strategic industries. And oftentimes too, there's a case made that you want to put tariffs on items because you have a huge trade deficit, and therefore you want to keep those items out. You want to keep those imports out, while at the same time you're exporting, while at the same time you want to produce goods and services that will take the place of those items that you're keeping out. So there are reasons why tariffs are imposed. A lot of reasons,
So,
basically.
all right. Before we get into the trade deficit question, because that's a big word that I'd love to get some clarity on, or a big terminology, the whole question of tariffs tariffs, it has nothing to do with the basis of discussion and conscience. It's a question of a percentage of pricing place across the board on goods, or it is subjected to the value and importance of the goods being imported or exported will determine the percentage of tariff that is placed on it.
You can place a tariff, as we call, as an ad valorem based on the value of the tax,
Yes.
value of the goods, or you can place a specific tariff, $10 or whatever, right? But generally, tariffs are imposed by one nation because of the reasons I gave,
Yes.
and it doesn't have anything to do with with any discussion. Countries normally want to pursue a certain economic policy. It could be, for example, import substitution. If you want to substitute local products for imports, then you put a tariff on those imports, raise the price of those imports, cause them to lose their competitive edge, and you simply produce substitute items at home.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons that's one of the ways that you can actually get rid of your trade deficit, because you'll be importing less of those goods, and you'll be producing more of what we call import substitutes.
Okay. So you would definitely, depending on your ability to produce at home, you might be
Yes.
able to import some stuff to support, to make up the
No.
shortfall.
You may
That
be
you
able to
produce at home.
produce some goods. You may be able to produce some goods at home to make up the shortfall after tariff has been imposed.
Yes.
Import substitution.
Right. I see what you mean. So, but when you have to export as a small country, like us in the Caribbean. And we are dependent upon export as well as not just export, but also imports coming into our country. Fine? And you're going to pose a kind of what we would consider unreasonable amount of taxation or tariff on the goods that we're exporting. Can we know, or is it good politics, or to therefore to reciprocate that level of increase in tariff on the goods that we are importing? And would that now therefore trigger some kind of a hostility among the two friends that are supposed to be doing business? I don't know if I'm making sense to you. If I am importing milk powder, fine, and but from your country, but I'm also exporting coffee to you, and you have now increased my coffee coming into your country by an additional 10 or 15 or 20%. So therefore, it's costing more for your consumer then, if I'm right, to buy my coffee. Fine? Especially the fact that I have diaspora people who I'm trying to get the coffee to. I could also input an increase a tariff on the milk powder that I am buying from you, that my other people buys from you, so to make it create some kind of a balance. Otherwise, we are going to be losing on one end and you're gaining on the other.
But why would you want to put a tariff on your imports coming in? Because if you put a tariff on your imports coming in, you're going to make it more difficult or more costly for your consumers.
But,
see, this is the way we have trade wars.
Yes.
A tit for tat. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? Yes, a tariff could be imposed on Jamaica's exports, and I think Jamaica's exports will be subject to some tariff too, in this situation. But does it mean that Jamaica has to put a tariff on the items coming in?
But you would do
only way. Well, in this situation with the tariff here, the reason why it will cost us, it's not that we are going to impose a tariff on those items coming in, but remember, goods and services to Jamaica come through the United States. And when goods and services, or goods I should say, come to Jamaica through the United States, when those goods reach here in the US and the tariff is imposed, then Jamaica pays a higher price for those goods when they are transshipped from the United States to Jamaica. And also to Jamaica, Jamaica purchases goods and services which will use inputs in the United States that are imported from other countries. Some of those inputs may have a tariff on them. So in the end, the products that we are going to import in Jamaica will cost us a little bit more because of the tariff situation that is imposed here in the United States. But it doesn't mean that, Jamaica is really imposing a tariff on those goods coming in. The tariff, the increase in cost is because of what is happening here, in the sense that the tariff is imposed when goods come to the United States and then they are shipped to Jamaica, then automatically those goods are more expensive.
Yeah, because you're actually paying twice on that.
Well, yes, they are paying more because of the tariff. And when inputs are imported from elsewhere into the United States to produce goods and services, to make goods, when those goods are then shipped to Jamaica as exports or imports into Jamaica, then the cost also increases. There's a higher cost for those goods, there's a higher price for those goods.
But in that case, now Jamaica would be at a disadvantage 2 times round.
Jamaica will be paying more.
Of course, your consumers will be paying more. So
Yes.
what we would have to therefore look at, what are the local producing things that we have? So, for example, we go back to milk powder. It means I would have to improve on my dairy industry to produce more fresh milk, to cut
Well,
for my community to consume and buy less milk powder.
Mr. Miller, there's
I
something.
don't know if that makes sense. And I'm not talking about a war here.
Yes, yes, you're right. Well, this is the whole thing. It's about what can Jamaica and other Caribbean countries now do in the face of these higher prices?
To
Okay.
mitigate that.
Yes, there are many strategies. There are national strategies. There are regional strategies that Jamaica can pursue on its own, and there are strategies that the region can use to try to counter, or not counter, to try to make themselves, or to try to get out of this disadvantage or this higher price. For me, it's about a reset. Now, sometimes we say we have to pause and reset. This is a good time to reset in terms of what we produce, what we import, and try to find ways or new products, come up with new ideas to produce goods and services, and even our consumption patterns. Are there things that we could consume that we do not have to import as we did in the past? Uh, um, what about, for example, you know, tourism? What about our hotels? Most of our Caribbean countries depend on tourism. How are we feeding the guest? Are we importing the items to feed the guests, or now, because of this, do we want to try to produce more of what we give to our guests when they come to our hotels? It's a big reset.
So
It's a big
it's not as a reset, it's a wheel and come again.
well, you can call it that
Yeah,
way too,
because
but
what they therefore it now says to you at home that listen, it cannot be business as usual. So we have to look
no,
at
it
how
cannot.
we deal with agriculture and to improve upon that and to look at how we allow the foreigner to begin to enjoy a Jamaican taste bud rather than to get too much of the coloring from what they're accustomed to at home. The fact that you're traveling, then you travel with the expectation of experiencing. So we really give you a proper experience at home and therefore
Yeah,
make it
the
much more
palate change. Yeah,
and change
change
your
the
palate.
palate, change the taste. In fact, a lot of us here, when we travel, when we live overseas here, because we're living overseas here, we still have our, Jamaican taste buds. Okay? And we buy the goods and services here that, when you go to the grocery stores, you see them on the shelf. We buy
But
them.
when you but in exercising discretion, and I use the word discretion again, we are small developing countries, fine,
Yes.
and you expect that if we have any kind of resources that is in abundance, that we'll be able to trade it to the bigger country, and hope that we'll get satisfactory pricing for that, so that we can deal with our various other challenges that we have at home. But if
Yes.
we're going to be exporting our thing to you and the persons who buy it from us to carry to you have to pay more to get it in, then it's going to be less of what we produce being able to come there because your consumer will not be able to buy it.
Well, it all depends on something that we say. It all depends on the strength of the demand for the product. And if we have some products that are in in demand worldwide, right? Those products, for example, our coffee is internationally known. It's great coffee. People are gonna drink purchase Jamaican coffee, you know, when they can get it. And there are other items that we sell, not only coffee, but there are items that Caribbean countries sell that are in demand worldwide. So they are still gonna buy those items here in the United States and elsewhere. Okay, but for us in Jamaica, okay, yes, there may be some um, increase in the price at which our products are going in or coming into the United States after the tariff is imposed. It's the
And
10% tariff that
which
our
is going to cause.
countries are subject to. But you know, we can still produce export our goods and well. It also depends on what type of negotiation. Remember, we are a set of small countries, okay? And the United States, as you said earlier, they are our friends. Of course, yes, our friends. We have had great relationships with the United States over the years in terms of travel, in terms of tourism, in terms of export, in terms of imports, okay? So we can still negotiate in terms of how our goods are exported to the United States even after this. So I'm looking at the upside of this, at the positive side of there is a lot to be done in in terms of where we go with our local economy, and there's also a lot to be done now in terms of where we go with our international economy, how we export our goods, and what type of negotiations we will be able to, you know, to achieve.
But is it customary? Is it a tradition? Or is it a question of who consider themselves the bigger partner in the process? For tariffs to be just imposed just suddenly, rather than advising your friends, say, listen, starting next week, we're going to have to add an additional 10%, or it's going to be creeped in, a crawling peg increase over a 3 month or a 6 months or a 1 year period, so that we can reach to a level so that we can, I don't know, tell me.
All countries have economic policies, and countries' economic policies are what they put in place to benefit their economy. So if I believe, if I'm a country, say Rod's country, and if Rod's country is such that we believe our unemployment is high, and if Rod's country believe that there are industries that we should grow, and if Rod's country believe that, for example, we want to increase our manufacturing base, then we are going to put policies in place to achieve these goals. And tariffs may be one of the policies that I may impose to reduce my unemployment level, because when I put a tariff on the items that are coming in, hopefully I will be able to produce goods, the same goods or similar goods locally, and keep the foreign goods out. And if I also believe that my trade balance, is in a huge deficit, then I'm going to put in place policies to reduce my trade balance. And if I also believe that there are instances in which countries may be trading unfairly, then I'm going to put policies in place to reduce the unfair practices to cause trade to be more beneficial to me. So I don't have to say, okay, Mr. Miller, your country, let us agree on something, or I'm going to do this. And I don't have to tell you. I simply put my policies in place to benefit my country.
Yeah, but you see, all right, in the perfect world, the business of that economic process and economic activity works well. But when you look at a bigger country and a small country, and you have to look at the geopolitics of that, then it goes into another era. We're going to go for a break quickly, and then we'll get back. The discussion continue with Professor Rhodd from the Florida Atlantic University. When we get back, this is Tenny Miller Live.
Hi, I'm Amy Flexx with Flexx TV, and I am here to tell you about our pay-per-view service we now offer. Pay-per-view streaming has helped many creators ranging from event promoters, sporting events, and concerts from all industries to monetize their content.
You may be wondering why choose pay-per-view. Well, I am here to tell you for one. You are in control of how much you can charge your customer per click, if priced right. You can win big with pay-per-view. We also offer on-demand, which can be another way to profit from your event.
So, what are you waiting for? Call us at the number below or email us at flexfm@gmail.com and let us help you reach a broader audience globally.
Flexx TV would like to thank you for your continued support. It is greatly appreciated. Flexx TV, your #1 television station.
Attention business owners, are you ready to maximize your tax deductions and take full advantage of every credit available to you?
Look no further than BMG Tax and Accounting Services, your trusted partner in Tamarack, Florida. With over 35 years of expertise, Nigel Blair is here to handle all your business needs. From bookkeeping to tax preparation, we provide the personalized care and attention your business deserves.
Don't let opportunities slip away. Contact BMG Tax and Accounting Services today. Call 954-289-6005. That's 954-289-6005. BMG Tax and Accounting Services, experience you can trust, results you can count on.
Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember, you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. Harriet Tubman is known for guiding enslaved people to freedom, the Underground Railroad.
Good afternoon and welcome back to the program. The program is Tenny Live here from Flexx Studios in South Florida. My special guest this afternoon is Professor Rupert Rhodd from the Department of Business, and he's an economist, and he's here with us this afternoon just to help us to understand this whole business of tariff and, you know, how the thing functions and how it affects you and I, and, you know, how should we deal with the challenges that tariff, and as a small country or as a small family, and, you know, how we unpack it. Dr. Rhodd, welcome again to the program, and thank you for being here.
Pleasure, my pleasure.
Before we went to the break, I was concerned about the whole geopolitics of it. Now, countries deal with other countries with other interests apart from economic interests, and their economic interests are sometimes tied to their political interests, strategically and otherwise. Now, when you have a big country like Canada, and Canada have had a relationship with Haiti for a number of years, and the success of Haiti can be tied to the economics and the benefit of some things of Canada. It can be tied to Canada in one or the other. But the success of Haiti means that the people in Haiti will be able to produce more uranium to be able to sell to Canada. They'll be able to put together much more sugarcane or beet to be able to provide more beet to make the beet sugar for Canada. And US and Haiti might be a major supplier of beet over time and has been over years to Canada. Why would you want to necessarily import a high price on the beet coming into Canada, which is making the sugar, and you know, no understanding that sugar production through beet is a major staple of the people in Canada, of Haiti. And not only that, when the economy of Haiti is functioning, then we have less unemployment and we have less crime and violence and other things, because you'd have more minds and people being occupied and being productive in producing to create much more wealth at home. I don't know if that's that question for you.
Let me just say to you, Mr. Miller, remember, when nations trade, nations trade voluntarily. Nations trade because nations mutually benefit from trade. When I say mutually benefit, the gains may not be in the self same, proportion, but I will not trade with you if you're going to gain and I lose. So the fact that nations are trading means that the trading nations are gaining. Okay? Now, it's voluntary. If at some point in time I've realized that my gains are diminishing or waning, then I will seek other trading partners or partners with which I can increase my gain over time. Okay? So it doesn't matter whether there are other factors that are a part of this relationship. The fact that nations are trading voluntarily, it means that the trade is dependent on, well, increasing gains on both sides. Nations are gaining on both sides. Other factors may play a part in the relationship over time, between countries. But when it comes to trade, I believe that nations, if the trade worsens, if the trade balance is worsening over time, or if things are not going right in terms of trade, then you should seek ways to correct that. And it could mean seeking new trading partners, or in this case, imposing tariffs. Okay? That's the economics of it. And that's where I'm coming from. Okay?
And I quite understand that quite well.
There could be other factors, but how important are those factors with regards to the trade situation between countries?
And therein where lies part, I think, the real issue. Mexico, for example. United States imports at least $800 billion worth of stuff out of Mexico on an annual basis. I understand. Somewhere that. And that is very crucial to the economy of the people of Mexico. When you suddenly, I'm not saying you mustn't impose a tariff, but my only concern is, just like you're concerned about increasing the wealth of the people in your country by getting more out of what is happening, what are the goods coming in, you must understand that over time, the people who you're buying from have also been arranged and have had their lives structured around that particular framework of the relationship. So one, if you're going to increase a tariff, I would think you at least give some ideal notice in advance and work it out over a period of time, I would think. And also the whole business of, because what it does is that when you impose a sudden tariff and at a magnitude of say 25%, you are now saying to the people in Mexico, your income level and your earning capacity is going to be reduced by 25%. Because when I do that, the persons who are buying the goods will not be able to purchase the same amount because their purchasing power would have been able to be reduced. So they have to buy less to export. So therefore, you're not going to be able to benefit from that. And therefore, the chain reaction of that can be somewhat a little bit devastating to, well, both countries, in particular the country that you're buying from.
Well, there are two sides.
I don't know if I put you in a precarious position with that kind of question. If that's a question for you.
No, but there are two sides to this coin. Number one, the importing country that has imposed the tariff. Remember, the tariff may not be fully passed through to the consumer. In other words, it depends on whether the producers want to pay or accept or take the responsibility for part of that tariff. In other words, the tariff can be imposed at $10, but you may not pass the whole $10 onto the consumer. That's one part, right? So that's that.
But that's a discretion. But that is a discretional decision.
It all depends on whether the demand is stronger. In economics, we say it depends on how elastic or inelastic the demand for the import is, right? The second situation too, Roy, is that the exporting country could also seek other partners.
Right.
It doesn't matter that you are exporting $800 million to one country, mean that you have to continue exporting $800 million. When I was growing up in Jamaica, I remember the importance of bauxite and sugar and banana exports. I'm certain our export base has changed over time. We are not that reliant on those items anymore.
No, thanks to
Okay.
tourism and other things.
Yes. So, as I said, pause and reset. This may be the time to reset. This may be the time to, you talk about the size of, Caribbean economies. This may be the time that they look at their relationship in a more serious way in terms of how can they really come together as a group of countries and increase their voices, in the world market, their voice when they speak, as a whole.
You
So
just
there are
diversify and find
opportunities.
new trading partners.
Yes, you can do that too. Let me tell you, I may miss, for example, avocados. Most of the avocados over here that we buy come from Mexico. I may not be able to get them later, but hey, there are other avocados too. Mexico can also find other areas to export their products. So I said there are opportunities here. Countries now have to look at their situation individually, nationally. Countries have to look at their situation as a group, Caribbean countries, and see what's the best path forward. It could also be that they have to come together and negotiate some more in terms of how they export their products and how they import their products. Okay, so yeah, pause and reset. Okay, opportunities. This
Yeah.
is this may present some great opportunities to change the way Caribbean countries have been doing things. It may be a great opportunity too for Caribbean consumers to try and identify local products which can be substituted for
You
their.
see, and it has some very multiplicity of challenges here because it left to government that you have in each of those countries and their outlook and how they want to, their very outlook on their relationship with other countries at this time and how we deal with that. That's one. Two, if we divert a little bit and look at, say, from the Caribbean and look at why does China, for example, seem to give the impression that this kind of a 224% tariff is seeding the fever for a Cold War or for some kind of an economic war to start quietly. It has nothing to do with just pure academic economics, does it? Does it appear that way?
I am not going to go there, Mr. Miller. I'm not going to go with it.
No, I'm not
What's
asking you
happening
to say, but just what it looks like on the surface based upon how China responds to it.
Well, and the Chinese, the government in China, the administrators in China, they are looking at it from their own light, and of course, they are going to make changes. And in the self same way, too, Caribbean countries should look at it and try to make changes.
The same principle applies to, say, Brazil and Guyana in terms of or some of these other countries where the percentage of tariff, like Mexico is at 25%, Brazil is at 25%, despite Brazil are the largest supplier of steel to the United States. And then there are other countries where you have a 38%, while some people just only facing 18%. We in the Caribbean or in Jamaica and maybe Barbados and Trinidad, we have a 10%, but even a 10% with that is still difficult for us. Is that a
10%
disparity or
is
it
difficult for us
depends on?
because remember too that Jamaica has a trade deficit with the United States. America has a trade surplus with us. So 10% in terms of tariff on our items, if it affects our export, if it causes our export to decline, it means that our trade deficit will increase even further. Okay, it will be worse for us in terms of the deficit. Well, maybe we
Just
need to
before you finish that,
maybe
I
we
beg your
need
pardon, Dr. Rhodd. Before you finish that, explain for the benefit of some of my listeners, what is it the surplus means as against a deficit, in terms of the trade surplus or trade deficit?
well, the trade surplus is trade in goods and services, right? If a country has a trade deficit, it means that it is paying out more than that which is coming in from trade, right? Not the current account, just trade in goods and services. So it means that we are buying a larger amount of goods and services from the US than that which we are selling them. It, that results in a trade deficit.
Okay.
If there's a trade surplus, it means that our exports are bringing us much more money than that which we are paying out for our imports. So Jamaica, for example, in terms of its surplus, Caribbean countries generally tend to have trade deficits with the United States, and the United States has trade surplus with these countries. Okay. It means that we are importing a large amount of goods from the United States, and we are paying out more for the imports that we are getting than we are getting from than the money that we're getting from our exports. Okay, so we tend to have a deficit with the United States. Okay.
So it has got to be known how the government of the day in Jamaica, Barbados, or Trinidad, how they look at their local production level at home.
Yes, and this is not only me saying this. I listened to Mrs. Motley, the Barbados Prime Minister.
Yeah, Mayor Motley.
She gave a very good speech on some of the things that can be done, and how Caribbean countries can actually deal with this situation. Some of the same things that I'm echoing here, I heard it in her speech too. And these are ideas that we picked up from our days in studying economics in grad school. We are always told that there are opportunities, there are import substitution opportunities when a tariff is imposed, and we are always told that countries will seek to impose tariffs when their trade situation is such that they either have too much of a deficit, or when they want to reduce their unemployment, or whether they want to increase their manufacturing base and keep out certain manufactured goods. And in some cases too, countries have imposed specific tariffs on just certain industries or certain items. Well, tariffs have been around for years. Okay, and at this point, tariffs is a big word.
Yeah, but are we now to look at this as where is the dawning of a new? It is ushering the need for a new world international economic order. Is that what it is? Because
a new world order, a new order of business,
a new order of business, at least as a start.
In terms of international trade, yes, and we just have to wait and see what comes out of all of these negotiations.
So the politics in the region now going to have to begin to reposition themselves so that they look at each other and look for new trading partners. So you're looking at possibly
that too.
Go to Africa. Africa is sitting there waiting.
It could be the same trading partners too. It depends on what the negotiations result in. It could be the same partners. Never know.
Well,
okay. And it also depends on it depends on how governments in the Caribbean react, to the tariff.
Well, I don't know. Aspects of it you would really want to tell us that. Mayor Motley says it well, I guess, based upon what you're saying, and if I can remember that well, we have to now look at ourselves and to see how we are doing what we are doing, how we can do it differently, and look at how we begin to work together to make things much better for each other.
That's what most economists have been saying. Most economists in terms of how do we deal with tariffs, right?
Yeah. And that is economics.
It's not about the politics. It's about straight economics, and it's
No,
about
no, no. But I beg to differ where that is concerned, Professor Rhodd, because maybe you're spending too much time in the classroom.
listen.
But the objective reality of what's going on the ground is that the politics is seriously at play within the context of the economics. They're tied together like wife and husband, if not closer.
Well, I am here to discuss the mechanics of it.
Yes, and I quite understand, and I do appreciate, and we appreciate that, and I do appreciate that.
Don't get me wrong. There's politics involved, but of course, I have to.
No, you're keeping us within the context of the understanding of the mechanics of economics and how the trade processes function and ought to function. Fine. Dr. Rhodd, I really appreciate your time. It's always appreciated, always valuable. And as usual, I know I can call on you once the time is available. You make yourself available.
Let's do this again one of these days.
No, definitely we have to. As the whole thing evolves. And more things come into and some of these other words that we have not been accustomed to become much more commonplace now, like tariff,
Yes.
and trade deficit and balance of payment. Then we will have to go into more discussion about these things. Dr. Rhodd, Professor, Assistant Dean of the Faculty of Economics, is that it? The University of Florida Atlantic University.
I'm a humble associate dean in the College of Business.
And of course, the man who is the brains behind the Alumni Association.
Coalition of Jamaica Alumni Association.
Yeah,
one of my loves.
Yes, I know, yes. You're a soldier where that is concerned. I know you love it to your heart. Professor Rhodd, always a pleasure to have you. Please, if we can do anything at any time at all about any function activity that you're having, just let us know. We'll welcome you on the program so we can discuss it and get the word out there.
Well, we do have our walkathon coming up at the end of the year for all the alumni groups here in Florida. November 22nd. So we'll talk about
and
that.
shamefully I did not attend the last time, so I'm going to have to make myself available this time.
Yes, definitely.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Blessings. All the best. Professor Rhodd, there from Florida Atlantic University. We're just looking at how we unpack and get a better understanding of this whole business of tariff and how the tariff functions and how it affects the rest of us. And what we really don't have to do. And as he pointed out, that Prime Minister of Barbados, who is a no-nonsense woman, a woman who seemed to have much more grit and, well, for want of a better word with a G, than a lot of the other Caribbean leaders when it comes to issues of this nation, issues that affect the Caribbean people and the Caribbean community. And she pointed out in terms of, the kind of a direction in which we can go and how we're going to have to begin to be as fingers of operate closer as fingers of the same hand within the Caribbean and, start to look after ourselves rather than try to figure that anybody else is going to look after us. Nobody else is going out there to provide us with the kind of a support, and we have to look at the politics that is tied into the economics and what you are expected to jump for or at, or don't jump for or at. If you're given certain privileges, what are you expected to give back or to do or not to do, where the politics of the economics is concerned? Because, in my book, they don't seem to be able to be separate. They're all part of the same dining room, around the same table. But our political leaders in the Caribbean, we hope that they will, good sense will prevail and they'll find a way to, get off their individual high horses and find a way to come to the table. Whether it's under the leadership of Mayor Motley or the leadership of somebody else who also has the capacity and the ability to be able to, and have the respect among their peers to be able to pull the group together and to say, now listen, let us find some common ground here. You do sugar, I do flour, you do this, you do that. How can we now support each other, work together? And where importation is concerned, coming out of somewhere else, whether it's now Africa, if we have to turn to Africa, or some of these other countries, how do we now, invite those people in and begin to develop relationships there? Because our traditional partners, we might not be able to, see eye to eye with them. And time changes, and so does man, and process and things changes. So we have to look at how we find a way to go about that and deal with that. So it will happen. But, it's interesting. And as the days go by and as time unfolds, different things are going to be happening and are happening. So we just, stay tuned and, to the program, to the station. And as it happens, we'll find the best way to be able to pass it on to you and to get you involved in these discussions and to find persons to come into the program that can help us to unpack and to get a deeper understanding of, this changing world around us and whether or not we're ushering in a new kind of a economic order for whether it's a region or for the world, because it affects China, it affects everybody, and it affects the Soviet Union, it affects us. It's the world new international economic order. How people do business with each other, it's got to change. Did I hear you say Michael Manley? Did somebody say Michael Manley's prediction? Well, yeah, Michael Manley did indicate to that and intimated that at least 20 or 30 years ago. We see what happens now. The chickens are coming home to roost. It's Easter. It's holy season. So I just want to wish for everybody, whether you're a Christian or a Catholic or a Presbyterian or a Baptist, whatever it is, religion you belong to, or you're a Pentecostal or revivalist, whichever way that you give praise and thanks within this interregnum, this season of, holy season of Easter. If you're not going to have pillau with flying fish, you might want to have bun with cheese or bun with fish, and chocolate tea on Good Friday morning. Me certainly not miss my chocolate tea Good Friday morning. Come hell or high water. And me have to have a piece of the bun scab. Yes. And a fish or two. And then there's Easter Saturday and then Easter Sunday. So listen, until I join you again when we're looking at other things within the context of this or other challenges that are out there, because there's so much things out there to look at and to talk about and to discuss. Roy Tenny Miller saying thank you for tuning in. I know you have a choice in listenership, and we are pleased and privileged when you choose to listen to us here on Tenny Miller Live, as well as to tune into the station here at Flexx FM. So until I join you again, you sleep the sleep of the just, free from all your cares and sorrows. And as your night turns to day, as indeed it must, I hope you'll wake to a brighter tomorrow. Thank you very much, and have a good night.